My name's Brianna. I'm the founder of Breaking Chains, an organization driven to spread awareness and educate the community on addiction and mental health and all those different things that are hard to talk about. So today I have here my good friend Cliff Lynch, who is going to be a part of our talk today. So feel free to interact with us. If you have any questions or concerns, you can definitely butt in, say hi, interact with us. If you have questions, we'll give you a few minutes at the end to answer your questions. So today we're going to talk about what it feels like to lose a loved one to addiction and how to go through all the different parts of grieving, because we all grieve differently, and what the path to healing may be. So I know that everybody does this differently, and it's really, really hard for some people to get past a certain portion of their grieving process, and that's why we're going to come together to talk. Not to spoil his story, but we both lost a sister to addiction. We both are in recovery from it, and this is why we're going to talk about it, because it's really hard being on the end of the spectrum where you're also in recovery, you've lost someone, and then you have to deal with that as a part of your lifestyle. So I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Cliff. I'm recovering, 3 years clean from meth. I lost my sister to heroin back in 2015.
Probably have to pull it a little closer and make it a little louder. Can you guys hear him? Sorry.
Can you hear us?
Just making sure, because
I speak softly.
yeah, he speaks kind of soft, so. Yeah, she said you're kind of muffled. Alright, so.
Is that any better? So I gotta yell?
You're gonna have to, yell. Alright, can you hear me okay? Because I'm using his phone instead of mine, because mine's on, low battery percentage. It's been a long day. So, how about now? Hard to hear a little.
My microphone is crap, just so.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it worked well last time, but.
Yeah, my friend said she's also lost a sister to heroin as well. That's true.
You should have added
Jenna,
that.
I know. We could have added her as well. You could always come on live and talk about it. At some point, I do want to talk about your sister. I loved her. I miss her. She was one of my favorite people in this world, and it still to this day haunts me that she's gone. So, I feel your pain, Jenna, and I really didn't want to have to, unfortunately.
Still hard.
You need to speak up.
Shit.
Alright, so how's the hearing now? Can you hear me?
We also got boats and cars and. No? That's going great. There's also a big old semi going by.
Alright.
That's gonna catch.
Let's see, can you hear us now? Just making sure the sound quality is okay. My stand isn't the very best. Alright, so. Alright, she said she can hear us. Alright, so we're going to talk about the grieving process and how everybody's different. So, I'm going to let. Alright, I'm going to go first. So, we're going to talk about what happened when I experienced the death of my sister. So, a lot of different things happened the day that my sister passed away. I was in jail. Yeah, I know a lot of people didn't really know she passed. My sister was doing very well. She was in recovery. She had been speaking to schools. She was a part of K6. She was working on getting her counseling degree. She was doing a lot of different things to overcompensate for this horrible disease process that she had that was slowly killing her. So she had a lot of anxiety. She had a lot of depression. She didn't always talk about these things. Instead, she spent a lot of time just pretending that they didn't exist. And this is where the stigma comes in. People don't realize that they have this trouble where they can't talk about what's going on in their lives. So that's something that we've had a lot of trouble with is, people, they hide it, they shove it down. Well, that's what she was doing. So, the day she passed away, she had gone in front of a judge. She was on probation. She had been told she was no longer going to get probation. And she looked at the judge and she said, "You saved my life. Thank you for saving my life." And in that event, she walked out knowing she was going to use one more time. She decided it was the last time she used heroin. It had fentanyl in it. She had taken 20 gabapentins or whatever she had taken the night before, 10 or 20, and she had passed away. Now, she had driven out to Buffalo. She had met with a guy that she did not know very well. He had handed her the drugs, and she could not wait to come home to do them. So she ended up doing them, by herself in the middle of a parking lot in Hamburg. And, it breaks my heart that my sister had to pass away alone, but that's what happens. People don't realize that's part of the process. If you are going to take that risk, it occurs. And I remember I was driving, and all the lights on my dashboard as I'm driving go off, right? And I'm with my kid's dad, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm having anxiety. Mind you, I don't know that she's passed away. I felt this urging feeling like I needed to talk to her. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on with Whitney? So I start calling her. I'm feeling like I can't breathe. My heart's racing. I'm flipping out, and then I feel this pressure, like this extreme pressure come over me. And all I can think is like, my best friend had passed away 2 days prior. His name was Ryan, and he was very, very close to me. And in that event, I felt that maybe his spirit was visiting me. I was so sure of it, and I was already grieving because he had passed away. So I couldn't even bear the thought of the fact that maybe my sister would be passing away too, because I knew she was getting off probation and that was all she wanted. So I, get up to the place that we were going. We were going to dinner with my boyfriend's family, or ex-boyfriend's family. Sorry, my ex-boyfriend's family, to go have dinner with my daughter and all that. We get there, and I'm seeing, his parents, his sister, his siblings. There's a whole group of people there, at least like 30 people there. And I start trying to find out where my sister is. And eventually, my mom says, well, your sister overdosed, she passed away. So now I remember feeling like everything went like black and white. I almost felt like the whole world, like I can only describe it as like a rip in the fabric of my reality. Because at this point in time, it felt like somebody had pierced a hole in the blanket of what we call our time continuum, and literally opened up a portal between the past and the future, and there in an instant my sister had passed away. I was no longer a living spirit to talk to see, to be a part of my life, and no longer, did she exist more than just a lifeless body, So for me, that initial turning point felt like it wasn't real. And I don't know if other people go through this, but the hardest part was realizing that this was real and going back and forth, for days to come after that to decide if it was real or not, because in the end, obviously, when somebody passes, we have to deal with the fact that they're gone, and it's really hard for some people. A lot of people like to pretend it doesn't happen, it didn't exist. They're still here, they're just, they're at the store, they're at school, they're with their boyfriend, but like, you have to face it. And that's something that was really hard for someone like my mom, was just to face it and realize that this person really is gone, and that we have to move forward in the memory of them in order to succeed as human beings ourselves. We're all going to pass away, and this is something that we don't want to think about at a young age, that we're all going to die. We're not going to be here very long. We live a short life, and all we can do is live to the fullest potential of what we love and want to do. So at the end of the day, I miss my sister, but her being gone has pushed me to do things that are more directed towards me and helping people, and not just working and being a body, a warm body, because I am more than a warm body. I am a person that has, visions, I have goals, I have inspirations, I have things to tell you that might just help you, but at the end of the day, I'm a lot more than a warm body working at my job. I do a lot, so yeah, exactly. And a lot of people I've met, they go through where they are in recovery and they lose somebody, and after they lose somebody, they tend to get worse, they relapse. And I remember a lot of people asked me, this is something that kind of bothered me. Many people messaged me, they were like, are you okay? Are you going to relapse? What's going on? Are you all right? Are you going to be able to do this? I'm being asked to work on one end. On the other end, I'm getting people that are like, are you sure you're okay? And I know it kind of sounds stupid that it made me bad, but I did not like being constantly hassled, like, are you going to be okay? Are you sure you're okay? But like, they're not offering to come see me. They're not offering to come to my house. They're not really doing anything for me besides trying to be nosy and see what's happening with me. And that's really how I felt. I felt like, yes, I did put myself out there. The second that my sister passed, I wrote fuck heroin right on the internet, and I'm still glad I did. But I'm saying also in the same instant, you know, if you have motives to message somebody and ask how they're doing without actually following up and helping them, then you're really not doing your job as another human helping another human. Because if you haven't gone through it, then you're really not experiencing it. And like I said, some people do relapse. People relapse all the time after they lose somebody. A lot of people aren't in recovery first. Usually they're not. A lot of people are currently using, and then they lose somebody and they end up passing away after, because what happens is they end up using regarding that, you know, and then they pass away. So I'm going to let Cliff talk about his experience with his death, and then we'll start to go back and forth. But I think the best thing you can do, as far as how I felt, it's okay to reach out and be like, I feel this, you know, I've experienced this. If you need any help, I'm here. But don't be nosy and try to figure out how somebody's doing. Offer them a hand, get them some food, you know, let them take off work. There's very minuscule things you can do to be a good person. And, you know, I'm not the type, I don't care if somebody writes R.I.P. Whitney on Facebook. That's fine. You know, I'm glad she was loved. I'm glad that people who haven't talked to her in 10 years missed her, because I miss her. That's okay. We all grieve differently. We all miss people in a different way. So, you know, I do not care about people who maybe haven't seen her. People are always like, oh, why are you going to write RIP if you're not friends with somebody, you haven't been close with them? That's fine with me. You can be as close in your mind as you want to be to her now or before. The past still matters, you know. So here is Cliff. He's going to talk to you about the loss of his sister, and then we'll go back and forth and talk about some other things and as well. So here you go. Here, we'll switch.
All right. I lost my sister in 2015, but before that, growing up, Rachel was always a child that had a lot of pressure. She was the perfect siblings in a hugely broken home. Always strive to achieve. I didn't find out till after she had passed that she ended up, I found out that she also was sexually molested as a child, or had been raped. And she had a lot of demons in her own closet that she never really discussed with any of us, that we didn't find out until long after. Well, to begin with, she was a mother of two. She was a registered nurse, you know, doing very, very well in her life, despite her addiction. And then her addiction eventually took over. She lost her children. She lost her job. Through a lot of hard work and dedication and many, many, you know, slip-ups, she was still able to dig herself back out of that hole. She was able to re-get her children. She was able to get her job back. She was working in a career choice that she still enjoyed. Well, she had a scumbag dealer that would constantly try to offer her a free bag. And again, we didn't know about this till after she had already passed. But they continuously kept offering. She, being proud or whatever it may be, never even filled me in. I remember I was in the kitchen with the children, dancing, singing Disney songs, cooking dinner. One day she had eventually caved. She had gotten a bag from this guy, and it ended up being a very bad batch that accounted for at least 20 overdoses in that night alone, including my sister. I remember the shock that came over me as soon as Bella came out of the bathroom saying that she thought her mommy was dead. We found her doubled over. When she had overdosed, she basically bent over and it cut all oxygen off to her lungs. And so she wasn't able to breathe for however long she had been in there. We called the paramedics, you know, they tried to revive her, they tried all the basic things, but eventually she had to be taken to the hospital. And as we're in there, you know, the family, the friends, everybody started coming through. I started reaching out, going to a couple of her local NA meetings just to see the impact that could have on somebody, you know, looking for some kind of positive answers throughout all this. I spent most of the days for the next week in the hospital with her, you know, waiting to see if there was any signs of life or anything that could come back. And I remember a lot of my family was hugely religious at the time. And so it came down to a really awkward and hard conversation of them wanting to pray for her and me basically arguing on the side of science that even if she was able to partially come back, she never would have been able to have a normal life. She would have never, like, there's so many different variables that could have happened that would not have been the ideal life for anybody, that anybody would have wished upon anybody. So I took it extra hard at that point because I'm sitting there basically trying to advocate for them to pull the plug once it was clear that she wasn't going to be coming back to who she was, or coming back at all even. And then after she passed, we held her funeral service, and honestly that was, as much as it hurt to lose my sister, the seeing all the different people and the different walks of life that she had affected was probably the most freeing thing from all of it. We had people that were still using, we had people in various stages of recovery, we had so many, the prim, proper, nurse, the prep, whatever you want to call them, the high end to the low end. And it really touched me seeing the level and the broad spectrum of people that my sister had impacted. And like Bree said, it did kind of sting when people wanted to constantly remind you that you're not okay by just asking you if you're okay, because you have to be honest with yourself. Even if you tell them you're doing okay, you're doing fine, ultimately inside you remind yourself that you're not okay with the loss, and you won't be for quite a long time. Some people, when you lose someone close to you, it ends up pushing towards another relapse. I kind of went the other way because I was still using at the time, and her passing was what made me want to finally get clean, and I was able to walk away from drugs, and I've still been able to keep walking away from them. Yeah, there's and like I get, Bree touched on it a little bit, and you'll still see people that say R.I.P. Rachel, or they'll post, and at first I did have a little resentment because a lot of these people I had never heard of or didn't ever see them reaching out. But in the end, it makes me happy that she is still remembered, that she still exists in some form, some sense, whether it be a fleeting memory, a reminder from a song. Something is keeping her around even when her physical body is gone. And I've still kept an eye on a lot of our friends that I had met through her NA meetings and through, coming to the hospital. I saw who was there every day and who wasn't. And I've kept an eye on them, and I'm happy whenever I see them succeeding, because a lot of us, it was our wake-up call. I think that's about all I have.
So a good part of, like he touched on, when I had my sister's funeral or memorial, I ended up kind of like taking over and speaking. And I know I probably went a little haywire because I ended up taking over like the whole service. But, it was really hard on me. And I know it probably sounded like I was just this feelingless person because I was speaking very articulately and, very, I almost probably didn't even sound very passionful because I wasn't crying, but I remember it was really rough on me to have to speak to about 200 people, about the loss of my sister. And this is something that I didn't want my family to shut this down and shove it under the rug. Like, there was not going to be no, she died unexpectedly. There wasn't going to be no, we don't know how she passed away. We are not going to cover that up. That actually is the scummiest thing you can do. I'm not saying everybody that does that is scummy, but as somebody who we knew what was going on, for us to say that would have been doing nothing but hurting our community. And, I didn't want to hurt my community. I wanted my community to grow. So when my sister passed away, we wrote her obituary. We wrote it, for what it was. We said she passed away from an overdose. She had relapsed. She was trying her best to live. It wasn't like she just wanted to keep getting high. Her anxiety and depression was so bad. She had pain. She was having back pain. She was having leg pain. She had sciatica. She had all these different troubles, and like she would go to doctors and talk to them, and they wouldn't help her. And it was like something that, I know her anxiety played a large part in it, but the fact that she felt like she couldn't get help also hurt her too. And I know that she had muted cries. Like, she would ask for help but couldn't really get it. I'm very open and out there, and that makes us very different. And it really hurt me that I didn't really reach out to her as much, because I did I was scared that it was going to bring me down because I knew she was using, like, intermittently, and I didn't really want to hurt myself that way. It wasn't like she was using every day, but, like, I'm also a recovering addict. I don't want to go and put myself in that situation. So there are times when I feel guilt for not, like, reaching out to her immediately and saying, why are you using? But she would have just lied to me anyways, and that's the truth. Because there were times that I asked her and she wouldn't tell me. And another thing, these are kind of the stages I went through. I became very fearful. I didn't post about it on Facebook, but I went through a very traumatic time where I didn't want to be alive, but I didn't know how to explain that being alive was very sketchy for me. Like, I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to disappear. I was kind of just hoping that I would stop existing without doing anything to condone that. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but I got really scared of, like, life and death. The idea of death freaked me out. I was constantly searching for a purpose and a God, and, like, why would my higher power do this to me? I did feel that way. I didn't feel like it was my higher power's fault, but I felt that maybe there isn't one. That's the thought process I had. And I was really struggling. Like, I would drive to work and I would break down driving to work. I would get scared about driving. I would pull over on the side of the road and kind of, like, shake because I would be so scared to drive. I would be, I'd have intrusive thoughts of running my car off the road while constantly being scared of driving because I was so plagued by my own anxiety from her death that I couldn't handle it, and I didn't want to get out of bed. I wanted to sleep 100%. That's all I wanted to do was sleep. I didn't want to wake up because waking up meant I had to deal with the anxiety. It meant I had to deal with the fact that I'm alive and I have to do something about this, and I can't just ignore work. I can't just ignore other things. And this is something people don't understand. Not everybody opens up about the mental health aspect of grieving after a loved one dies. So, I didn't always talk about it, but I was really struggling to survive my life. And I know that I always seem so strong and so out there, but I have, mental health. I can't always do everything. I can't always answer 20 messages. People would message me all the time, and I don't always respond. I just can't sometimes. And I think that the day that I had that dream from my sister where she came to me and she opened her arms to me in this visitation dream, I feel like is what it was, I started to finally relax, and I started to finally come back to and decide that I was feeling better. Because at one point I was feeling like I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do this shit anymore. I didn't know how to even talk to people. I felt like I wasn't myself. I felt like I had lost a vital piece of myself in her that had disappeared. I was constantly lighting candles and walking around my house trying to talk to her. I was fucking buying tons of crystals. And I love crystals, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love crystals. I love all of spirituality. I'm a big fan of it. But at the time I was looking for her and everything, I was hoping that if I touched her stuff, she would come to me, but I was also scared of seeing her in that form. So it was really hard on me because at night I would be scared that, like, she would possibly be a ghost in the house. And I would be sitting there worried that I would see her that way, and I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to realize, like, for good she was gone. So when I had that dream of her, like, coming to me and hugging me and telling me everything's okay, that was when I started to relax. I started to stop freaking out. I started worrying about work, and I started to get inspirations that were coming to me. And it was like, these really spiritual, awesome messages of, like, meditating, and I started meditating and talking to positive people. I started talking to people that have faith in Christianity, people that are spiritual. I started to get different aspects of that. I started to read books on near-death experiences. That was a big help for me. I think that was the best help for me, actually, because in all of, like, almost literally all of near-death experiences, people talk about, how they get to the other side and the white lights and all the people that came to them. And I know that a lot of people might not believe in that, but the fact that millions of near-death experiences are like proves to me, possibly myself, that there is another side, and I really needed those types of proofs. And I read books from people like Deepak Chopra, talking about life after death. I looked online. I listened to doctors. I actually listened to a podcast of doctors talking about all the crazy near-death experiences that they had with patients. And, like, one guy talked about how he did a surgery, and He was performing CPR on a patient. So this patient's coding, and he's performing CPR, and he's a new doctor. So the other doctor pushes him aside. He says, "Here, I'm stronger than you," and starts doing mouth to mouth on this patient. So the patient is now practically brain dead. They're doing CPR to bring her back. And the best part about this is while doing the CPR on this patient, she saw herself being worked on. So 3 days later, her life is saved. She's better. She gets to go home, and she says to the doctor, "You need to start working out because I watched you while I was passing away. I was floating in the corner of the room, and I saw them performing CPR on you, and you had to stop, and the other doctor had to push you out of the way because you weren't doing it hard enough." And he said, "And I know what you were wearing." And she described how he looked, his cap, his hair. She didn't even know the other doctor, and the other doctor saved her life because he pushed the other one out of the way and started pumping. And he was stronger, he was doing it right, the other one wasn't. So different stories like that. That podcast I listened to is called the Higher Side Chats. I listened to them, and this doctor talks about all the crazy near-death experiences that he's heard from other doctors, and he takes them all down and he writes about them. Another thing, I went through where talking to people, I didn't mind talking about it. I still don't mind talking about it. I will talk to anybody about anything. But at the end of the day, I have to sit with myself and my decisions and my own feelings. And at the end of the day, I have me. So when I started to implement self-care, when I started to meditate, I started to kind of pray, spiritually, put good intentions out there. I started to light incense, I did get into essential oils. I've been doing things like this where I speak to you guys about what I've really been through, honestly. And when I talk about these things and I find things that I love, I notice doors open up for me that I've never heard before. And lately, there's been a lot of good, a little bit of bad. I've had a couple bummers happen that really kind of upset me because I was really looking forward to them. But a lot of other good things have happened, and I'm going to be speaking at the rally in Lockport. I've met a lot of awesome people that have great exposure, and this organization, Breaking Chains, has really given me a purpose in life. And I know that I've always had one, and I know that I've been on that path for a long time, but my sister's death has almost helped me in many ways. And I think that when you finally get past that initial shock and pain and trauma, you start to see that their spirit pushes us, and they push you with inspirations and thoughts. And if you let all that craziness out of your mind, all that petty bullshit, all those petty worries, petty thoughts go, you start to get these messages from your loved one that come in, and all these awesome things that happen where doors open, where you're becoming more famous. People are talking to you that are on TV. You have people calling you because they want to hear your story. You're going to go do this. You're getting asked to come be a part of this. When those things happen, you start to realize your loved one is present and it's pushing for you to go the right way. And when bad things happen, sometimes they happen for a reason, so more good can come of it.
And it also pushes you from simply existing to actually living your life.
Exactly.
I had for a long time, I wanted to try stand-up, and for whatever reason, I buried myself in work, home, that's it. But with her life passing, and as young as she was, it helped me realize that I can't keep going through life that same way. You have to start actually living.
You do. And I'm just telling you right now, if you're living in that pain and that suffering of losing a loved one, I loved my sister very much. We didn't always get along. We fought a lot. And that's because we were so alike. We went through where we were going through the same situations. We were dealing with the same demons. And, we were always on the same page a lot of the time. And I think because at that point we didn't really get along. But, she was my best friend. There is nobody on this earth that can replace my sister. It is what it is. There's, and in my heart, I know, I'll see her again. I do know that. But if you're stuck in that initial pain and depression of losing somebody close to you, like a loved one, a mother, sister, daughter, whatever, all the pain is different, but it's all the same. So in the end, it all comes out in the wash. A child, I feel would be very more devastating to me. I will say that. But this was very, very hard on me. I've known her my whole life, and get yourself out there. Start doing things for other people and do things that you love, because just because I go to work and pass meds doesn't mean that's what I love. And I love my job. I love taking care of elderly people. I love helping them pass away. But at one point, watching people pass away every day, watching the elderly people get sicker and sicker and die, just, it's really painful if you're somebody who's gone through a traumatic death. And I think that, at one point, getting into this and doing this and bringing more life to people instead of death and a more quality of their life, that actually helps me a lot. And I think that I was meant to do this type of work. So, when you find your purpose, don't let it go because you're depressed. Obviously, your loved one might be pushing you to move forward, and don't just decide that you don't believe in it. Don't just say, no, that's not possible, it's not them, it's not real, because I've had more miracles happen to me since my sister's been gone than I ever have in my whole life. And I'll tell you, even my best friend that passed away, things happen to me all the time. I had a psychic tell me, your good friend leaves you large coins all the time, and I had a whole bag of large coins I had been picking up since he died. I mean, it's things like that that just don't happen, I've had a lot of coincidences. I talked to a lot of psychics. I actually threw about $600 down the drain trying to find real psychics, and I talked to a couple of them that were great, that had great insight, that probably did connect me to my sister, and I also talked to other ones that were terrible, that just took my money. So, you can form that connection with your loved one yourself. You don't have to have a psychic to do it, and that's, we're all psychic, we all have intuitive properties, and I think that when you understand that about yourself, you will be able to form that connection through prayer and meditation on your own, as long as you're willing. It's all about the willingness.
And there's this huge stigma right now, or this whole culture where people are afraid of confrontation. And if you know somebody that is currently going through something, you don't want to be the one speaking at their funeral, to where it says, oh, well, I wish we could have done something. A lot of us, your friends, for the most part, when they're acting off. And don't be afraid to reach out. And sometimes being the better friend or better sibling isn't the one saying, go ahead and live your life. It's the friend that's there telling you what you need to hear, even if they don't want to hear it. If you have to be the bad guy to save a life, you're going to have to be the bad guy to save a life.
I can't tell you how many times I told my mom I was going to tell probation that she had relapsed, and it wasn't like multiple times, it was a few times. It wasn't every day, but my mom said, well, give her the chance to grow. And I said, no, I really feel like I should tell them because I'm scared she's going to die. And I sounded like a total jerk because here I am, threatening kind of to put her back in jail, and I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I just wanted my sister to live. I would rather see you in jail than dead at the end of the day. But also at the end of the day, it's your choice. Once you're in active addiction, it's not anymore, but that prior choice to relapse is yours. Exactly. You have to be the bad guy sometimes. You really do. And I was the bad guy. I remember people telling me, like, your sister was talking about you. Your sister was saying how you tell your mom everything. Hi, Alex. How you say everything, and that she can't tell you anything. Well, you know what? I want to be your friend, and I want to be able to help you in a lot of ways, but sometimes that means doing things to save your life. And while you're alive, you might not know that, but if you have to be that sibling that goes and tells probation, or tells the parents, or doesn't give them money, you can stop somebody else from enabling someone.
Being supportive doesn't always mean being blindly ignorant and obedient. You've got to be supportive of them actually living a better life.
And Jenna, I think that's 100% a good sister thing to do. That's, I got yelled at a lot of times because I always wanted my sister to get in trouble when she messed up, and it wasn't that I was trying to be a jerk, but I knew she was going to end up doing all these drugs. It wasn't just going to be one, she was definitely going to get herself killed, and I knew that. And I just knew how she was, when she used, she didn't use lightly. She didn't use with any sense, And at the end of the day, we need people like that to take care of us and show us that we're cared about, even if it's in the way we don't want. All those people, I think all the people that I ended up taking money from, because all those people saved my life by throwing me in jail. And I know that they don't see that, but the law is still learning how to work with addiction. I don't think that jail is always going to help addicts. I think that some addicts are used to jail, and they're still used to being institutionalized. They actually want to be in jail. And that's half the issue, is some addicts would rather be in jail than be out and be, on the street, because they feel like they don't have what it takes to survive in the regular world. They do not feel like they are a part of the community. They do not feel like they can be a part of the community. Who has a requesting us? No, Mr. Amar, I'm not adding you. Sorry, some weird freaking. No, get off my page, bro. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not adding people from weird places. Amar, Ahmed, I blocked them. But, yeah, definitely, I think our legal system is learning how to deal with addiction and how to implement it with the stigma. It is harder.
Although mental health and addiction in the court system have come a long way.
Yeah, they have.
I saw a case in court where basically the guy was in there for mental health issues, and rather than just locking him up, I watched the DA and the judge work through an old obscure case where they believed it would still be relevant to actually get him help. And I've seen that also with addicts, where it's no longer as quick to just throw somebody in jail, especially somebody that's trying to do better.
Right.
A lot of times, if you're forthcoming with the court system, they will actually work with you to get you the treatment you need. And treatment has become, it's not as swept under the rug as it used to be. It's more it's commonly accepted in society now. If you tell somebody that they're going to go get clean, it's not looked at the same way that it would have been 10 years ago. As soon as, it comes to light that you're an addict, if you're in the court systems and you tell them, they can actually, rather than throw you into an ineffective process and just throwing you into jail where you can still get access to that, or not actually face your issues at all, they'll actually work on getting you into a rehab or getting you into another alternative. And that goes, and a lot of times people are afraid of consequence right now. Hold on,
Yeah,
I gotta scroll down.
Scroll down.
People that don't want help, they are difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you gotta be the bad guy. Sometimes the best thing to do for somebody is to get them out of their own way. A lot of people, nobody wakes up wanting to be an addict. Every one of us felt like we were in control the whole time. We had it down, didn't need no help.
Yeah.
But if they don't want help, you've also got to factor in the mind that their thought processes aren't always in the, the healthiest fucking mindset.
Yeah.
So just because they don't want help when they're using doesn't mean that they don't want help as a person. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Because now that drug has taken over their entire mind, their body, and it's really hard because those people, even though maybe deep down they want help, that numbing and that high that keeps them from feeling real feelings that they don't want to feel anymore, it's a cycle.
Yep.
When you use, you form a lot of guilt for the bad things that you do, so you know that you're out there doing these bad things in order to achieve your high.
Or you
So
find a
then-
validation for it too.
Right. So now, you found yourself in this cycle that keeps repeating itself. And I think that's one of the worst parts is you're in the middle of the cycle. Now you feel more guilt because of what you've done. And then suddenly, people are mad at you and you use that as an excuse to keep using. So it just keeps going back down because you're shoving down the guilt again and again. So a lot of these people do want help, but they don't know it yet, and I think that jail can help some people wake up, but I also think that some people don't really know how to live regular life, and that's really scary that some people have been in jail so long they haven't learned how to get better, but they also don't give it enough time. Like, they'll go into mental health at UPMC or wherever, probation office, and they'll stay for like 6 months. Some people need years of treatment.
Yep.
At least a year. It took me I had to go get sent away for 9 months. There was no me coming home after a month, and I did treatment prior to that, and 2-week treatments didn't work for me. But I was a heroin addict, so.
And treatment's a really broad spectrum. One treatment may not work for you. You've got to find the treatment that does, whether you need to turn to spirituality, whether you need an actual, facility to help lock you away from your own issues and struggles, or if you have a cold, you're okay with trying different types of medications, or if you have ADHD or bipolar, you're okay with going through different different types of medications to figure out what would work for you.
Right.
And addiction's no different. Some people go to NA meetings, some people never need that, and I'm not shitting on either one. As long as the treatment works, that's all that matters.
I know, my coffee. I'm definitely addicted to coffee. I drink way too much coffee, but that's what I mean. Addiction itself too, it runs itself rampant as a personality type as well. So like what people don't understand is, you know, just because you're addicted to a substance doesn't mean you're an addict at heart. And a lot of the addicts at heart, those people have to go to meetings for the most part. I'm not saying you can't recover without meetings, because meetings are very vital. But also, I want to say that people that have that part of their brain that doesn't regulate itself, they definitely should go to meetings, because that takes care of the spiritual aspect of addiction. It takes care of the, you know, coming together as a community. That's why I recommend them a lot of times, because it definitely helps out.
And knowing
Hi,
that
Richie.
you're not alone.
Yeah, you have to know you're not alone, and that's a huge thing. People, addicts, like to isolate themselves. They like to pretend they're the only ones hurting, and they're not. They're hurting their whole family. And I would have done anything to save my sister, but at the end, I really, you know, there's really nothing I could do. So,
And along with the guilt and being one of your triggers that stick you in a cycle, one of my issues was I was working 6-7 days a week nonstop, and I felt like I would validate it by saying that I needed it to keep my job. And what kept me from getting clean for so long was the fear of how I would perform without it. So we lock ourselves into this constant fear of,
rationalization.
where you can pretty much validate any action that you do.
Yeah.
But after getting clean, you know, sure there was a dip when I got used to not working at the level I was
Go
working.
up on there.
But once you break it and you actually start fixing your body, because drugs do a hell of a lot of damage to your body.
Do years and years of damage.
Once you fix that, though, you'll find yourself in better shape, typically, if you stick to it, than you would ever believe. Like, I used to think that me working on meth I was Superman. I was able to run around nonstop. Problem is, eventually I got to the point where I was rolling out of bed and I fucking put in my little glass roller and just basically hit it to get back up to normal. Like, I wasn't even getting high anymore. It was just so I didn't start in the negatives.
And that's what people don't understand. They don't realize that once you're an addict and you're using every day, drugs do not affect you. Your body creates a tolerance towards any drug you put in your body. It's like when you go and your doctor prescribes a medication to you. So the first 3 days you might have side effects, okay? So getting high is actually a side effect of intoxication of a drug. So if you're taking a drug and you're intoxicated, right, you get that high per se. Now the third, fourth day, you're not high anymore. You might be a little bit, but not a lot. And as time goes on, suddenly you're not even getting high anymore. And all you need is that initial dose to even feel normal. And suddenly you need more and more and more and more just to feel normal. So I remember, you know, I used to have to go and do like 10, 20 bags of heroin to feel normal. You know, should you have to use freaking 20 bags of heroin a day to feel normal? No, you know, and I don't want to say normal. I definitely, you know, got high, but I'm saying if I wanted to feel like I wasn't going to die by the end of the day, like I wasn't going to roll in my bed and just start shaking and convulsing, I had to do at least like, you know, 10 bags. And that's how it really was.
I've been clean for coming up on 3 years. I did have a couple little relapses after Rachel passed. The cravings, I don't know, because everybody goes through different styles. And with mine, it was more of a cold turkey kind of walk away, force yourself through your shakes and get everything out that you need to get. Psychologically, the cravings still pop up here and there, but a lot of times when I crave them, it's more of wanting to use them as a tool. You know what I mean? To try to get back to that level of that. But as far as physically craving the drugs, no. And one of the biggest deterrents is actually seeing people that are still using and where they are today. Like, these are the same people I used to get high with, and now when I see them, it reinforced that it was the best decision of my life to get off of them. I've been offered even my choice drugs multiple times since then, and happily been able to turn them down. However, I do smoke weed.
And that's okay. I think that, you know, some people can do that, and I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's right. I am the type of person that, you know, whatever works for you, and I'm not against it. I think that the whole medical marijuana thing can help some addicts, and I think it will hurt some addicts in the same aspect, because that person that might be a real addict, you know, at heart might not be able to do it, whereas somebody else might be able to. I don't know that. But yeah, he's doing really awesome. He's definitely one of the best people I have glad you don't, Jen. That's
Well,
awesome for
I went-
everything you've been through.
I went through over a decade where I didn't smoke weed, and honestly, the smoking weed didn't even have anything to do with my addictions or my recovery. It was when I was going to the doctors, they gave me 4 different medications for my anxiety, my depression, and my ADHD. And I didn't like that. I didn't like, because I'm still at the beck and call of another drug, even if it's prescribed to me.
Right.
No different
That's
than an amphetamine user feels with Adderall or anything. I feel like I'm still at the beck and call, and I
Yeah,
try
me
different
too.
strains. If I smoke an indica, I'm done. If I smoke a nice sativa and I don't overdo it, I've been able to negate the need for, my 4 different freaking medications with one plant.
Yeah, and I think that's really awesome that some people feel that way. Like I do, I get tired, but I definitely went to a point where I would just fall asleep if I smoked immediately, and it would make me kind of lazy. That's why, for me, it doesn't really work very well. But some people, it works great. This is where, like, I'm not judgmental about what you go through as far as your recovery. I've met people that at one point were on the streets smoking crack, and they go and they have their drink on the weekend or they do whatever. But also I know the person that smokes crack that ended up back on crack because they smoked pot. So this is where you have to be careful.
Yep.
And you just have to know your boundaries, be aware of what's bad for you, be aware of your ability to get addicted to substances, because if you're somebody who can't regulate everything you do, like me personally, I have trouble regulating my coffee intake, I have trouble with shopping, I have trouble with so many different things in my life in balance. This is even right now, me doing this, I love it, but I'm overdoing it. I already know I'm overdoing it. I've been actually putting my work aside. I actually got offered a job, on another note, at a rehabilitation center in Erie, and I am so excited because it pays almost the same amount that I'm making right now. And on another note, am I going to take it? I don't know, because I have to get a license in another state, and I love the jobs I have right now, and I'm probably not going to leave them. But, it was nice to have somebody on the phone be like, well, we're going to sponsor you, and on top of this, we want you to come work for us. So like those people are people who haven't been through addiction, that they want to help people, and that's amazing that somebody from the regular public wants to help people like us and
Yep.
people like you that are listening to help get that way. I'm backwards. Indica keeps me up, and I'll pass right on.
Well, it's definitely come a long way since I was a kid smoking dirt weed. Like, when I first started smoking again, it put me on my ass pretty bad. So I got to know how much I can deal with. And like she was saying, with medications and knowing what your ability to do, we've even come pretty far with that. Like ADHD, obviously, with being a methamphetamine addict or ex-addict, I was terrified to even get any kind of treatment for my ADHD, because I didn't want Ritalin, I didn't want Adderall or any of that. So I worked with them. They were actually able to prescribe me Strattera, which is one of the only ones for ADHD that isn't an amphetamine.
Right, that doesn't have amphetamine.
So I mean, when
amphetamine.
you're worried about, you don't have to neglect your current other issues and completely for addiction. There are alternatives that'll help you.
Yeah, and you can take into account if you are somebody like him who had an addiction to uppers. You like meth, you like cocaine. There are medications that aren't going to enable your addiction, because I'm telling you right now, if you go on Ritalin and you had a cocaine addiction or methamphetamine addiction, you kind of are like possibly putting yourself in a bad predicament where you can end up back in the same situation. Also, like myself, so if I'm somebody who's on heroin, I should stay away from things like methadone, subs, opiates, stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that everybody on the sub program is doing wrong, because they're not. I don't think there's anything wrong with it besides what the government is doing to use you. Also, I don't think that there's anything. Now, methadone, I feel like methadone itself is kind of enabling, because you can use other drugs with it. And that's what's scary, is like you could actually overdose on it, because you can take it. Well, yeah, Subutex too, but they only give that to pregnant women so that they can't, the naloxone doesn't hurt the babies. But yeah, I mean, usually if you're on Subutex, you can use other things as well. But Suboxone itself does have a blocker in it. So I do try to tell people, like, work a good program, live a good life. At the end of the day, if you're living a good life, then you know what you're doing. If you're running around, sneaking around, spending all this extra time trying to get your stuff, doing bad things, lying, doing extra things to get money so you can do those things that when you're not doing the right things. If you're doing the right things and you're living a good life and you're on a program, then that's fine. I'm not against it, but you really have to be aware of the medication thing. And your doctors don't always know how your addiction works. So your doctor might put you on a medication, but like here's an issue I've seen with people. They get on SSRIs for their depression or their anxiety. They can't get their script one day and suddenly they start withdrawing off their SSRIs and now they're having trouble and they relapse on real drugs. So I'm just telling you that you have to be aware that those drugs that your doctor's prescribing you might not be the best for you. So this is where you just have to do some research. You look into things that are similar to your addictions and you have to be careful because at the end of the day, if you go and you're not taking that initial drug, right, and you're on that medication that the doctor gives you, you start withdrawing, then you end up on something crazy because you're withdrawing and you're going through that mental itch, to use something, then that turns into you could possibly pass away. So it could be something where you literally innocently had a drug given to you by a doctor. So be careful. And I have to say that if you do go to meetings, they do help with that because you have a community of people that are going to hold you accountable. And going to places like outpatient helps too. Like I went to outpatient up until I think a month ago, so I've been going for 3 years, and people are like, why do you still go? And I'm like, that's because if I don't go, I'm going to get in trouble, you know what I mean? I could be not held accountable. So all it is I went on vacation, did a bunch of stuff, and I'm probably going to start my counseling sessions back. And another good idea is get a regular counselor, just a regular counselor that can talk to you about your relationship, your codependency, all those different things that you're dealing with that are aside from drug addiction. Because you don't want to sit here and not take care of the things that led you to drug addiction. Because we all have these mini cycles that are in our big cycles, like our codependency, food, all different things that we neglect, our bodies, and then we end up in the big cycle of addiction because we didn't take care of the small ones, if that makes sense.
And you want to make sure it's an unbiased thing, because I turned to my friends for a long time, but a lot of that, they would sit there and tell me exactly what I wanted to hear.
Right.
Or, not even that, even if they tried to be biased, I could paint the picture to where they would tell me what I wanted to hear. Like, we lie to ourselves and lie to others so many times throughout the day without even realizing it.
That's true. We are the biggest manipulators of ourselves and everyone else. And those people that are lying to you probably believe their own lies. So you can't always be that upset about it. They honestly, when they're telling you a lie, they're telling themselves the same one. So you don't have to get so mad at the addict that is really suffering, but what they don't realize is in their own pity party and their own self-obsession that they are hurting everyone else around them. So if you are watching this video and you've been informed by us and you're using, there's many ways to get help, and I'm going to tell you what they are.
And another friend of mine at work, he came in, he injured himself.
We're at the pier in Barcelona.
Yeah. He injured himself at work and was basically given a script of hydros. Within the first month or so, or second month, he had pretty much eaten his entire script within the first week. Like, he was burning through them rapidly, and it was a growing addiction. Another one of our friends, now, bear in mind that you do not want to just switch one addiction for another because that's not going to help you.
It won't.
However, if one's a little less lethal at the time, then yeah, that's going to be a big help at the moment. They put him on to Kratom, which is kind of a hot button thing. Some people hate it, some people love it. As far as it just being an herbal supplement, I haven't personally done a lot of research into Kratom because I don't use Kratom.
Yeah.
But he hasn't touched the hydros since he started using Kratom. Now granted, he does Kratom pretty much every day like you would with any other medication.
But if it works,
if it's working for him and he hasn't needed the painkillers, and the scary thing is, if you can't get your prescription, then you start looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
And with Kratom being so readily available, legal, and just purchasable pretty much anywhere, you don't have to worry about him running off and finding a rougher alternative for what he can't get. So as long as he's on that, he's got a constant legal supply that's not going to put him in jail, it's not going to put him in the grave.
Yeah, but here's the crazy thing. Now our government is trying to make Kratom illegal, 1. 2, they're trying to say that it has all these, these side effects, but in retrospect, all the medications that Big Pharma put out have at least 7 side effects minus a few.
Yeah.
So, I would rather at the end of the day somebody be taking Kratom than taking an actual opiate that's going to affect your receptors differently. Now it does induce a kind of opiate effect, but not the same way. So it affects a part of the receptors differently. My sister at one point though, she took tons of kratom, like a lot, and I worried about it, but in time, she ended up switching. So this is where you have to be careful, like with anything. The drugs your doctor gives you, the drugs you find on the streets, the drugs you find anywhere, any drug, if you are an addict, can lead you back out. So this is where you work a good program, you come to people, you talk to people, you go to counseling. The number one way to stay clean is abstinence, but not everybody can deal with the idea of never taking any substance their whole life, because I'm telling you, at some point you're going to find yourself in a doctor's office or a hospital, and somebody's probably going to say you have to take this or you have to do this or blah blah blah, and you're going to be faced with that choice. So the person that takes that substance and then feels terrible and feels like they should, they've relapsed, they've done wrong, that person might feel so guilty that they really do relapse in the future. So this is where you have to just keep an open mind and work a good program and do the things that you need to do to get better. But what I was saying was, if you're using and you feel like you want help, I am not affiliated with AA or NA in any way. I do not represent them, but they are a good source of help. If you would like to check out meetings, type in AA, NA meetings in Westfield, New York, or Chautauqua County. In Chautauqua County, the best thing you can do is type it up in your Google search. You'll find ones AA is meant for Alcoholics Anonymous, and NA is Narcotics Anonymous. And if you would like to attend those and see what it's like, feel free to go. If it's a closed meeting, then you should not attend unless you are an addict or alcoholic. If it is an open meeting, then you can go and experience what they are going through. If you would like a better perspective on addiction or alcoholism, if it's open, you're allowed to go there and kind of see how it runs. They talk, don't interrupt or cross-talk. That's a big thing that I learned very quickly. You do not interrupt a meeting, you do not cross-talk. You will know when you can speak. You will address yourself as either a supporter, an alcoholic, an addict, so that's very important. I cannot talk about anything else to do with that because I am not affiliated with them.
They won't force you to talk either. You can go there and see, like I said, with Rachel passing, I went there just to see the effects and to see the community and figure out if it's right for you, because some people it works great for, some people it doesn't. But you owe it to yourself to at least try to find out if that's an alternative for you.
And it's also an anonymous program, so obviously, like, if you go to them, there's going to be people there who do not follow the rules, but it is anonymous, and your information should not be leaving the rooms of the meeting. Also, there is resources. If you go to a hospital and say they turn you down because you do not have alcohol in your system or benzos, one thing that a woman told me, she said, if you feel like you really need to get into a detox center, the best thing you can do is tell them that you are, going to hurt yourself, because in the end, sometimes that's the only way people get into treatment. Also, there are sponsorships. You can call different phone numbers. I can reach out to people for you if you would like to go to treatment. It's all depending on your insurance. If you're under your parents' insurance, usually you can get into a good rehabilitation around here. Say you have Medicaid, you have to be put on a waiting list. There is Suboxone and methadone if you want to go that route, but I would suggest the other ones prior to that. You can also go to, basically you want to do anything you can do prior to going to jail because you messed up. So there's also counseling up different areas. Look up addiction counseling in your phone book. You can call around, see if they're accepting new patients. They will take Medicaid. There's options. I know that when I first wanted to get clean back in 2012, I didn't realize there were options. I didn't know who to call.
And
You can go.
We live in the best time possible right now for this, because with the internet and everything, the communities online, social media being what it is, you can literally look everything up yourself without, throwing yourself out into the wolves right away.
Yeah.
You can go look at different types of treatments. You can look at different types of programs and everything else. We have access to a lot more help nowadays, so there's no reason why, as a community, we shouldn't be getting better.
Right. And that's why we created this, breaking chains, breaking the stigma, breaking that initial, problem of not being able to talk about these issues because they run themselves rapid. We have tons, there's, you know, healthcare has tons of addicts. A lot of people that work in healthcare have addictions, and this is something that's hard to talk about because they're scared if they talk about it, they're going to lose their job working in healthcare, and that's a huge thing. So I do want to start some like nurses meetings for nurses. I want to get transportation going as far as getting people safely to and from places and appointments. So I know that Medicaid likes to do Medicaid fraud. They like to give people money to go to methadone. There's a lot of different things going on with that whole Medicaid bullshit. And if you're using Medicaid transportation to get around and they've offered you money, please report them because you could get in trouble. Two,
I heard rumors that you can get paid for even taking it now.
you can get paid just to take a Medicaid cab, and it's messed up because your drivers are trying to use you and use your addiction to get to you. Also, Medicaid cabs, they make money, they pay people to go the methadone clinic to sign up for it, and then they give them drugs. Be careful. You know, we're going to start a transportation thing where I employ people to drive to and from different facilities, and it's a safe drive. They know they're going to be with somebody in recovery. So if you feel like you want to be a part of that, let me know. Also, if you want to tell your story or come on my channel, if you would like to be a part of this and, you know, be a part of your community, if you're in recovery or even not in recovery and you want to talk about what you've been through as far as mental health or addiction, I need more people to come on my channel. I need more people to be a part of this. Also, spread the word. We need sponsors. We need donations. We need people to put into this because this is going to be big. And if you want to be a part of a bigger picture, feel free to help. If you would like to order a shirt, I'm going back to this. Our shirts are going to be in and done by the end of next week. So if you want a shirt, give me your size. You can pre-order. It's better if you pre-order. They're $20. If you have a loved one that's passed away, you can put them on the back of the shirt for $20. That's $40 total. If you want to be known as a sponsor of Breaking Chains, you can go on the back and have your name listed on the back, and you will be a part of it. We're sponsored by a couple people so far, and we're doing great, and I need more help. I can't do all this alone. I have Cliff. He's like my little secretary here to help me, but we definitely need a bigger team. I need more people in recovery willing to talk with other recovering addicts about, you know, recovery, different recovery methods, different things that they can do. So thank you so much for being a part of this video. If you have any more questions or concerns, please get a hold of me. I would like to interview you. Please message me if you would like to donate or help or buy a shirt or do your part. Thank you.
And gracefully.